Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Xenosaga, a brief recap. So this time, we're going to be talking about the Japanese exclusive content that released between Xenosaga 2 and Xenosaga 3, excluding Xenosaga Freaks, because it's not hugely plot relevant. But first, before we begin this, I want to start pretty quick. I want to, once again, thanks to the Xenosaga Wiki. I'm going to refer to the slide each and every single time because their information is greatly helpful for the foundation of especially this part, considering this is all content that was exclusive to Japan and has only relatively recently been translated into English with the exception of one project, but the information is definitely very, very important, and so I'm going to go back. Okay, so first we're going to begin with Xenosaga 2-3, A Missing Year. This is a Japanese exclusive webisode series that was published between 2005 and 2006, and it reveals very important transitory story for both Shion and Jin, as Xenosaga 3 begins a year after the events of Episode 2, hence the title A Missing Year. It also reveals crucial information that informs critical characters from the entire trilogy, and Episode 3 tries its hardest to slide in this information, but it's a little messy if you don't know the full context. So at the beginning, after the events of Xenosaga 2, Shion is left to compile numerous piles of paperwork on the Gnosis events concerning albedo, etc. 6 months pass, and Jin is contracted to inquire about the various Gnosis attack incidents. He is able to learn that Gnosis attacks focus on highly populated areas, and they disappear a short time after their appearance, suggesting they are being controlled by someone. The latest investigation team led them to a boy who spoke of a person named Grimoire who was connected to the case. Now, the investigation deepens into a special type of Rielian developed by Utic 14 years prior during the Mission conflict. However, the records of this Rielian are barren. Original assumption was that the Mission conflict caused her records to be wiped, although second glance reveals that this Rielian's memory banks were artificially modified. It comes to light that her design originated with Joachim Mizrahi, even though no records of her manufacturing exist, and Joachim Mizrahi continues to fuck it we ball. As the investigation is continuing, Gnosis begin to invade, as Cosmos begins fighting them off to protect the Rielian, Yuli, and Shion amongst others. We also see a mysterious woman who has arrived on the scene to reclaim the Rielian. This is Doctus. She's an agent of an underground organization called Scantia. Chiefly responsible for directing infiltration and combat units, she carries out her missions in a calm and collected manner. Also note, I'm saying Scantia only because that's how they pronounce it in the game, because it's mentioned in Xenosaga 3. I like to call it Scientia, but I'll say Scantia to be proper, I guess. Her body is a remote control type android, operated wirelessly by the real Doctus by projecting her consciousness into its artificial brain to manipulate the body, allowing her to conduct missions in safety without physically being harmed. And before we talk about Scientia, we can talk about the UMN finally. So, this has been a thing since the very beginning of the series, but since it's more fully being detailed, we can talk about it. The UMN is the Space Internet. It's a mysterious informational virtual network developed by Vector that spans the entire universe in its 500,000 planetary systems. Due to being a large decentralized network system, anyone from one of the Galaxy Federation's planetary systems can instantaneously connect and talk to each other in less than a second. And I also want you to note the symbology here for Ouroboros being used for the UMN. I'll bring this back up in Xenoblade 3. And the UMN means Unus Mundus Network, which means the One World Network. And Scantia is an anti-UMN underground resistance organization that felt a sense of danger in the world that relied solely on the UMN, and they investigate the darkness hiding within it, as well as that of Vector Industries. And do note the infinity symbology. I will bring this back up in Xenoblade 3. And more on Scientia. It was created about 100 years prior to the events of Xenosaga in 4669 by a woman named Melissa Ortus. She's an investigator we'll learn more about in Xenosaga Pied Piper, as she worked directly under Captain Jan Sauer, or Ziggy when he was alive. We'll talk about her soon enough, but anyways, back to A Missing Year. So, Doctus ends up making away with the girl, Rielian, and Jin arrives on the scene, but a bit too late. Shion, Cosmos, and Jin travel to rescue the girl before it is too late. Now, the game brings up this concept kinda out of nowhere, and it's super important. So this begins by talking about something called Lemegeton. This is a program that is used to control the Zohar in order to summon Gnosis to the lower domain. Its origin is unknown at this time, but it was deciphered by a man named Grimoire Verum. By sending out a specific wavelength, it's possible to interfere and thus control the behavior of the Gnosis. Several thousand years prior before the start of Xenosaga, the Lemegeton was used in a failed experiment in order to control the Zohar on Lost Jerusalem, or Earth. Grimoire Verum. He was a scientist from Earth before it was dubbed Lost Jerusalem. He deciphered the Lemegeton program in the 2000s AD, before the TC timecode was adopted. The specific year is never given, so 2XXX to 2005-09, as TC was adopted in 2510. Grimoire was a former chief of Vector Industries' Zohar research department at Toronto, Ontario, Canada. If Yoachim Mizrahi is the man who balled, and Dmitry Yuryev is the man who was currently balling, Grimoire Verum is the man who discovered ball, because boy, he fucking balled big time. During the experiment, back on Earth, Grimoire hooked up his young daughter, Nephilim Verum, to the Zohar in an attempt to resonate with his core. Instead of her activating the Zohar, she vanished as soon as the project began. The project continued until the Zohar was activated, causing a phase shift event that not only caused Grimoire to vanish as well, but also caused Earth to disappear. There were a number of people who were able to flee the disappearing planet. These became known as the Immigrant Fleet. So, about this, the Nephilim that we've been seeing throughout the whole series, this is that Nephilim. Her name is Nephilim Verum, and it is very important that she was alive on Earth before becoming in contact with the Zohar. And this coming in contact with the Zohar is very important for her role as an XP of Ellie from Xenogears. Anyway. After the failure of the Zohar project, Lemegeton was then handed over to the Mizrahi Cerebral Sciences Research Facility, and was restored by Yoachim Mizrahi, who then used Lemegeton to create the Song of Nephilim. Yoachim inherited the ball, as it were. Alright, so who is this chick? This is a Realian created by Yoachim Mizrahi for two purposes. She was intended to be Lemegeton's control device, and she was also implanted with Nephilim's memories, Grimoire Verum's true daughter. There's a point where it's kind of confused that she is Nephilim, until you learn her real name. Her true name is Almadel, and she knows little else other than a fear of a man who resembles Shion. Suo Uzuki, Shion's father, who passed away during the Miltian conflict, was previously a member of the Galactic Federation, but it's revealed that he's been working with Utic on the side for unknown reasons, notably in regards to information surrounding Almadel. Shion finds his name amongst a list of other Utic contributors for this event. Now, back to chasing after Doctus in the present time. They go back to a Scientia hideout, but are captured. Doctus then leads Jin, Shion, and Cosmos to a Vector secret division named Ars Nova. Inside, they discover that Grimoire Verum is very much still alive inside this world of memory, similar to how Nephilim is, and he is the active agent behind the Gnosis attacks in the present. So his goal is to guide the vessel, Almadel, influencing the real world he cannot occupy, so that Nephilim, whose existence is also scattered across the cosmos like his own, can be revived inside Almadel. Nephilim's spirit guides Jin into stopping her father's mad antics, thus killing him completely. This also comes at the cost of Almadel's life as well, something that traumatizes Shion into a suicidal state. Jian and Cosmos help Shion cope with the situation. Although, fun note, it is theorized that Grimoire Verum is a reincarnation of Jesus Christ. More on this later. It is also of note that Grimoire Verum is also a Xenogears XP of a character named Shigeyoshi Inoue, who is a captain seen only in the prologue of Xenogears, notable because this captain also has an unnamed daughter who visually resembles Ellie. And again, there will be more notes on this when I cover Xenogears, but this is very important, and also very not important for some specific things we'll talk about later. From this, Shion is demoted at Vector for invading their secret databases, and Cosmos' project is halted. From this, Shion decides to quit her position due to the knowledge she's learned about Vector's underbelly, and joins with Doctus at Scientia, thus bringing her position at the start of Xenosaga 3 to make sense. Now, Xenosaga Pied Piper. This takes place 100 years prior to Xenosaga and focuses on Jan Sauer, Ziggy before Robot, as his team of anti-terrorism investigators track down a serial killer going by the name of Voyager. Notably, this game is also Soria Saga's final contribution to the Xenosaga project. Jan Sauer, Lactus, who would then become Kanan, and Melissa Ortus are deployed to the planet named Abraxas, which will later go on to be named Mictum, and this is important for Xenosaga 3, in order to investigate murders happening within the UMN. During his work, Jan met the widow Sharon Rosas and her son Joachim, and this is not to be confused with Joachim Mizrahi. Joachim Rosas is different. Totally different person, lived 100 years before, just similar name. The two began to court as they continued their investigation, and Sharon's medical knowledge comes in clutch in their investigation as they uncover the source of funding behind Voyager's murders. Gasp! It's Dmitry Yuryev, as it always is. So yeah, Dmitry was alive even then, thanks to his body-swapping ability. and he's the one funding Voyager, revealed by name to be Eric Weber, another one of Jan's teammates. Yuriev arrests some of Jan's team, but he persists until he discovers the truth behind Voyager's abilities. So, Eric first encountered Udu after a dive into the root structure of the UMN, and received a terrifying vision of the end of the world. As a result, he's become obsessed with Udu, and formed a contract with him where he would serve as an observer in the lower domain in exchange for power. Eric immediately then begins to murder large swaths of people at the Pilgrimage Council, causing Udu to renege on their contract. He then makes a contract with Yuriev for supply of drugs needed to sustain his body after this, but then this contract also ends with Yuriev reneging on this deal, causing Voyager to abandon his physical body in an attempt to re-encounter Udu. And this is where he becomes the Black Testament for a higher power. We'll go more into that later on when we talk about the origin of the Testaments. Of course, this also means that his direct role in killing Sharon and Joaquin are directly what caused Jan to commit suicide, thus leaving his body in Ziggurat's hands to recycle his life. Jan's co-worker, Melissa Ortiz, is the one who finds him after his suicide, and thus forms Scientia to stop Vector in ensuing the UMN's anti-system from this day. It is also theorized that Melissa would go on to pilot the Doctus body in the future. It's unknown how this would realistically be possible, but, people extending their lifespan isn't a new thing in this series, and it's never confirmed, but it is a theory some people have. Xenosaga I+II. This is a Japan exclusive and Nintendo DS strategy RPG that is a retelling of Episode 1 and 2 of Xenosaga, with some slight retelling of events, such as telling Episode 2 from Shion's perspective in place of Junior's in the original game, as this story was fully written by Tetsuya Takahashi, where Episode 2 notably was not. This is one of the only Xenosaga projects to not get an English translation in its full. Right now it only has a menu translation as far as I'm aware, but I will describe some notable differences in the story in the following slides. So, for Episode 1, in the Woglinde section of the story, a Realian named Alex accompanies Shion through Cosmos' training simulation in the Encephalon. Ziggy rescuing Momo on the Pleroma, and Andrew Trankov's flashbacks are considered side content, unlocked after certain criteria are met. Pierre Ririk is an added character who works at Yuriev's Salvatore faction, though he is helpful to Junior and Guinan, implying he knows their true identities, and that is Pierre right there. Patriarch Sergius XVII now appears in Episode 1 to better establish his role in Episode 2, and he argues with Pierre about who should control the Zohar emulators. The vision of Udu's revival now includes scenes from the Omega system from Episode 2 breaking out of Miltia, aka the best scene from that game. Kanan appears after the Albedo fight inside ES Simeon with the ES Asher, and he fights off Albedo while the party escapes. The Song of Nephilim and Proto Merkaba dungeons are combined into one, and Momo now fights with a bow like she does in Episode 2 and beyond, no longer the wand she used in Episode 1. Now, Episode 2, the party retains their designs from Episode 1 minus Cosmos. Orgula from Ormus no longer exists in the story, and that is her right there. Alan gets a subplot about him first meeting Shion after transferring to the First Division. The Miltian conflict prologue is a sub-story within the two retelling. Junior investigating the Woglinde and the Utic ship is also a sub-story unlockable at this point. Citrine has a larger role in the URTV flashbacks, and she also participates in the UMN dives into Sakura Mizrahi's mind. Sakura dies during the training mission while Rubido and the others face off with the Udu-infected URTV units. It's heavily implied that Albedo is the cause of her death. The second half of this UMN dive, the Winter Domain dungeon, is removed and replaced. The URTV flashback continues to their deployment into Second Miltia and their failed attempt to destroy Udu, when Junior severs their link to each other. Citrine is shown to be with them, but is too weak to be useful to the link and collapses. Negredo realizes he has no anti-Udu link and realizes his true purpose. This is to be Yuriev's body double. The scene of Albedo getting infected by Udu and Rubido and Negredo's attempts to help him are fully shown. At this point, the party actually faces Albedo like they did in the end of the flashback. The Curse-Washers receive a sub-story in which explains how they met Albedo in Old Miltia after he collapses from his battle with Negredo, where Albedo comments about how much he knows about Negredo's true purposes. The Curse-Washers launched the Song of Nephilim into orbit before it was sealed up by Joachim Mizrahi. There's another sub-story that tells us how Shion met Kevin when she joined First Division. Wilhelm explains that the vessels of Anima are connected to Chaos, and wonders if Chaos will finally start getting involved in what is happening, and there's more on the vessels of Anima in Xenosaga 3. The Testaments have a conversation with each other, where they're laying out a plan to intercept the three groups heading to Old Miltia. The Black Testament speaks for the first time to the amazement of the Blue Testament, and the Red Testament and Blue Testaments argue over which of them will intercept Shion's group. In the end, the Blue Testament intercepts Shion's party, and the Red Testament intercepts Albedo, and the Black Testament intercepts Herman and Richard, who are following Shion's group. The party has a boss battle against the Blue Testament's ES Neftali. and the party encounters Pope Sergius XVII and Pellegrini in the Zohar room, along with a few additional scenes with Margulis and Kanan. There's a boss battle with Pellegrini while she pilots the ES Issachar. Instead of facing off against Pope in the Omega system, the party faces off against Proto-Omega itself in an ES battle using all 3 units. The whole party journeys with Junior to the time-space anomaly, which is now a proper dungeon. ES Simeon has fought again as a boss, and Albedo himself is now a real boss that the party can lose to. The truth about Sakura's death is revealed to Junior, which shows that she sacrificed herself to save Albedo, and not the other way around. There are additional scenes in the ending with the conversation between Margulis and a shadowy figure that may be Heinlein. Congrats! We are now ready for Xenosaga Episode 3. There was a lot to talk about. I don't have any cutscenes to show because these games were, not really like cutscene heavy. It's all text-based, so it's not really anything I can really interstitch. But yeah, so next time we're going to be talking about Xenosaga 3. I think I might split that into 2 parts because that game is so thick with information. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time for that. Check you guys then.